Mr. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has urged the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, to fly to America to give evidence to Congress about his links with Jeffrey Epstein. Let's get reaction now from the doyen of royal commentary, the host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
Hi, Mark. I loved the way that you teased this before the commercial break, because this does feel very political, doesn't it?
It does indeed. Why is suddenly Sir Keir Starmer so concerned about the Epstein situation? Is this a dead cat bounce so that we don't talk about the state of Britain at the moment under his premiership?
The state of Britain, to knock those videos and headlines of him tripping, which I thought was very unflattering.
And metaphorical.
Him falling. Yeah. And I just look at this and I think I have to be, honestly, I'm fearful for what I say here, because I know that this is a prime minister that will jail people for their opinions and what they will say. So yeah. I actually hesitate to criticize him, but it does not feel like an authentic passion of his. This just feels like he is trying to not only divert attention away from some of Britain's weaknesses, but it just feels like he wants to go with the flow and say in typical politician form exactly what he thinks the people want to hear, whether he means it or not. We have seen that the artist formerly known as Andrew is not necessarily truthful. So why would anybody trust him sitting down and testifying before the American government? Why is this a fixation for anyone when we've seen that he's capable of dishonesty?
Most definitely. He's a foolish man of poor judgment and has brought only bad headlines for the royal family in recent years. But Kinsey, is it time to end the punishment beating of the king's younger brother?
No. He needs to go away. Exile is the only answer. He needs to disappear for the sake of his daughters and their future and their children's future. The monarchy the monarchy looks weak with the amount of people that are dropping out. You know, we used to hear about King Charles talk about the slimmed down monarchy. Well, it happened, whether he wanted it to ultimately or not. We lost the Queen, we lost Prince Philip, we lost Harry and Meghan, and now we've lost Andrew. You know, for Prince William to have a stronger monarchy as a King William, it would be nice to have the support of Beatrice and Eugenie. But unfortunately, with Andrew's sins hovering and constantly being brought up, I think it jeopardizes their future within the fold and their ability to help out William when he needs it. When he did a garden party, I believe it was last year, he invited all of the cousins. And for a second, it was like a breath of fresh air, because it looked like the royal family was strong. There were multiple people there representing them, and they were young and fun and beautiful. And I think that with Andrew poking around, we saw him recently at Windsor. I think he was getting ready to get on a horse. It angers people and reminds them and all of us of what he's accused of. He needs to just quietly disappear, and the same goes for Fergie.
Who would be king in 2025, beset with problems as a result of his younger brother Andrew and, of course, his runaway son in California, Prince Harry? There's a real risk that King Charles's monarchy will be tainted by all of these scandals, not of his making, Kinsey.
I know. Don't you feel real sympathy for him over this?
Yeah.
Because this is also a man that shows up, will sit there and shake hands with every single person that waited to see him in the rain. And he has cancer. And I think that we forget that he comes to London once a week for treatment, because he does consistently show up, and he's doing these hard tours and he's going overseas. But we forget, because of that work ethic, that he's an ill man.
He most definitely is. It's amazing, isn't it? Multiple administrations have presided over this crisis. The public are furious. It's a vote loser, not a vote winner. Why is it still happening?
Well, I'm afraid what's happened, Mark, is that over recent years, we've developed this kind of Gordian knot over border and immigration control, Or it's no longer really enforceable by the border force, because as soon as somebody gets within territorial waters within our jurisdiction, then there are a number of opportunities for the migrants, be they on small boat or in lorries or whatever else, to claim various things under international law, including human rights, modern slavery and asylum. And all of those have now been embedded into our own domestic legislation, which really requires a huge effort to unpick all of that, and a very, very bold political leader who is prepared to try and break this Gordian knot and say, I am going to tear all that up and start again. And I'm afraid we haven't seen that. We've seen politicians come in with all kinds of ideas from different, stop the boats, smash the gangs, all those kind of things. But you are not going to be able to do this, Mark, unless you have a really bold political leader that is actually going to shake the foundations almost of the British Constitution itself, not just by tinkering around with the immigration rules. And that is what we lack. And I mean, my two that I would look at over the years have been Tony Abbott in Australia did it under
Operation Sovereign Borders.
Yeah, and if you speak to the Australia, I know some of the guys that did that, and they will tell you that he was vilified, Mark, vilified in some parts of Australia for that. The UNHCR came after him, the lobby groups came after him, the courts came up, but he still did it. And now the second one, Mark, is Donald Trump in America is doing things that actually would be unheard of by the Supreme Court of America a year ago, turning people away at the southern border, rounding up illegal immigrants in the cities of America and deporting them to countries, and actually placing real leverage on those countries that refuse to take them back, and flying in the face of a lot of human rights lawyers over that side. So that's what's needed. And, we don't have that. We haven't had that because our political parties, be they Conservative or Labour, have not had that really, really bold political leadership to drive that through and to get it through our Constitution, which includes the House of Lords, our own Supreme Court, the European Court of Human Rights, which we all know, generally speaking, are quite favourable to, granting status to people who have come here, on humanitarian grounds. So it's going to be tricky. It could be done, Mark, it could be done over time, but it really requires that kind of political leadership, which we haven't seen yet, in my view.
Well, you mentioned Tony Abbott and Operation Sovereign Borders, and of course Donald Trump in the United States. Upwards of 12 million people entered America illegally in the 4 years of Joe Biden's presidency. He unilaterally closed the border, and they've now got a level of illegal immigration in the hundreds per month, which is quite spectacular. But we have to be careful, don't we, about fool's gold from prospective politicians, prospective prime ministers. I mean, if, for example, a figure like Nigel Farage wins the next election, if we exit the ECHR, we take away, get rid of the Human Rights Act, revoke that, and look again at the Refugee Convention, are they sufficient levers to stop the boats, Tony?
Not overnight, Mark. Not overnight. It is going to take at least 6 months. Well, you have to give 6 months' notice to leave the ECHR. Even then, you have to unpick the legislation that's already in place around that. There is provision to exclude people already from you claiming asylum here if you've come from a safe country. Actually, in fact, this government are using that for their one-in, one-out scheme with France. So if someone comes, is not coming directly from a place where you can argue that they will not be admitted into the asylum system, what you cannot argue is that they cannot claim protection under human rights or modern slavery. And so you have to create an environment where you will not be allowed to claim asylum, human rights or modern slavery at all if you come on a small boat from France. Now, there will be loads of lawyers, loads of barristers, loads of people in the Lords that will come up with exceptions, Mark. Oh, you can't do that for children. Oh, you can't do that for, disadvantaged people. And there will still be a huge lobby of people that say it is unfair, it is totally unreasonable to do that. So it will take time. And really, those on the right are advocating detain and deport. I used to do that, when I was an immigration officer. But in order to do that, you need somewhere to detain people. And our detention estate in this country has been slashed now to around 2,300 beds. And half of those are occupied by foreign national prisoners because our prisons are full. And so if you get 1,000 people on a red day, well, it's not going to take a genius to work out that sooner or later you're going to be overwhelmed at Manston, and it will continue to pour through into the communities, which is what the British people want to see stopped. So you need all of that investment, all of that legal change. I'm sorry if I'm painting a bleak picture here. I mean, I'm saying it is doable, Mark, but it is going to be a lot of hard work and a huge amount of political will to do it.
Well, you're so right about that. You're going to have to change the constitution, as you mentioned, so much legislation, exit the ECHR, all the rest of it, tearing up treaties, and no doubt becoming a global pariah, which I don't care about. I actually don't care about our reputation internationally. I care about our reputation at home and what the British people actually think. And you're right about the cost as well. It will cost billions, won't it? One of the reasons why Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill was so costly was going to be the cost of policing that border and the deportations. So that's why we need a good economy. It'll cost money. What do you think about, for example, Nigel Farage, who, according to the polls, is likely to be our next Prime Minister? Is he in danger of over-promising and under-delivering, with talk of calling the head of the Navy, turning boats around and stopping these crossings within days of entering Downing Streets?
We have had the Navy in there, Mark, in the last couple of years. That was tried by the last government. The Navy, though, are bound by the same legal frameworks as the Border Force are. It doesn't make any difference who it is. You are still required under international law to rescue people at sea. If we're saying we're no longer going to rescue people at sea and we're going to let people drown, and we could then become culpable of homicide, I don't think either the Navy or the Border Force would be very interested in doing that, because those dinghies will turn over in a flash. They are very low in the water, are hopelessly overloaded. And so I think, just saying, well, let's put the Navy out there and sink them, I don't think realistically in peacetime that is a policy. You have to detain and deport, because some of them are still going to try. And unless we have some major breakthrough with the EU or France on returns deals, we're going to have to do something really, really radical in terms of making that deterrent a removals deterrent, and there's a lot of work to be done on that front.
But your message is, briefly, it can be done. And for example, if Nigel Farage is true to his word that he'll look at the legislative framework of this country, if the will is there, the boats can be stopped.
Yes, Mark, they can be, but it won't be instant, and he needs a huge amount of support across Parliament and in the country, and a huge amount of political will. I think he's done some pretty massive things, what with Brexit, other things like have been really controversial. So he is the sort of guy, but he's also going to need a lot of help, a lot of people around him who know their onions, lawyers, policymakers, experts, which you might not find right now, Mark, in the heart of Whitehall, who are going to have to come in and help him do it. So yes, it is doable, but it's a bit of a mountain to climb, I'm afraid.
And a Sun newspaper exclusive, Tony, before I let you go. Furious migrants in a military camp are given freebies like art classes, sports events and well-being sessions. All of this brings Britain's border policies into disrepute, doesn't it?
Well, people reading that are going to say this is ridiculous. So these are not detention centres. The problem we've got is we've got too many people coming in and we've got nowhere to put them, Mark. And so we've got lots of people saying, well, I'm not having, it's NIMBYism, really. And I understand that. I wouldn't want them in my backyard. I don't suppose you would either. Most people. Annoys me is people running around with refugees welcomes banner saying, oh, they're welcome here, but when it comes down to actually, will they come into your backyard? No, they won't. So we've got to stop them getting into the communities, which does mean detain and deport, but as I say, that's much harder to achieve than we might think.
What about Rachel from Accounts, by the way? This is a major headache now for her, which is Wednesday's budget is likely to contain an extra £15 billion worth of welfare payments paid for by those who work. The message is clear from the budget, which is it does not pay to set your alarm and get up to work because you'll be paying for someone not to. Let's get reaction now from a very high-profile entrepreneur, former Apprentice star and businesswoman Lubna Zaidi. Hi, Lubna. Welcome to Morning Glory.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You've been very successful in the world of business. What sort of message does it send out that taxes are going to go up whilst benefit claimants will seemingly receive a cash windfall?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I'm feeling extremely hopeless and distressed, continuously living in broken Britain. And I think we need to bear in mind that I myself was raised on a council estate. So I do appreciate there are people that definitely do need help. And of course, we should help them. However, I don't trust the current government in making the right decisions at all. And I mean, why would anyone want to continue to stay in this country? It feels as if the country is being invaded in terms of we literally have no borders here. And now it seems as if our personal bank accounts will also now be invaded. And apologies if I sound extremely crude when I say this, but it seems as if the government has pimped out the country and prostituted the rest of us. And this is exactly how I feel, and I'm sure many other people feel the same way.
Most definitely. And it is the messaging from this Chancellor that actually, if you're going to be a wealth creator, and of course, don't forget that the wealth creators provide the investment, the employment opportunities and the tax receipts that keep the lights on. But if you're a wealth creator, or if you're anyone that gets up and puts a shift in, does overtime, skips a holiday, borrows money to start a business, well, you're the enemy.
Exactly. And it's not really rewarding us to work hard. Actually, there are probably certain people that are working and they will choose to now not work because that will likely be more beneficial for them to be on benefits. And I've heard this before as well. Even since a few years, I'm hearing this same thing, that actually it's better for us if we stop working and just sit on benefits. So I'm not sure they're going to be rewarding the right behaviors. I feel that a lot of people who have the means to leave the country, they're already planning to leave, and this will be the final nail in their coffin. And I must say, I'm feeling exactly the same way, because it's about value. Most people don't mind paying if they can afford it and if they can see some value. But a lot of people cannot afford to pay more taxes. And even when we do pay, we don't see the value. So why on earth would we want to stay here? And it's not even just about the people in this country. Why would people outside of Britain want to invest in Britain? Lots of people are steering quite away from Britain, and that's not what we want. We want more people to invest here. We want the right people to come. But sadly, we are more interested in housing fake asylum seekers, for example, and we are more interested in rewarding those people who could probably work, but now they're going to choose not to. So I think this whole government and everything they're doing, they're all over the place. A lot of Rachel Reeves' behaviors in the past have been quite questionable in terms of ethics, and I'm not sure that I personally trust her to get anything right. So Wednesday will be the nail in the coffin, and I think a lot of people will be making a decision as to whether to stay in this country or not.
And as a successful entrepreneur yourself, is that something that you're seriously considering, leaving the country of your birth, the country that you love?
I love Britain, but I think the way my experience, especially the last year, with trying to use the police service and other public services has been horrendous. And I don't understand what I've been paying taxes for. So I can't see the value here. If I do have the means, I will probably likely leave the country. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are many other people feeling exactly the same way. I just feel like, the politicians have raped this country. They're literally raping us publicly. And apologies, like I said, I am gonna, it sounds crude, but it needs to be said. This is absolutely ridiculous. We are trusting these people who have lied to us. In their manifesto, they have said things clearly, and they have done a complete U-turn. And there is, in a democratic society, there's absolutely nothing that we can do about it. We are literally at their mercy. So we're going to have to wait until Wednesday. And then a lot of us, sadly, who can't afford to leave, we're going to have to suck it up. And that is not on. That is absolutely ridiculous. I feel they're completely incompetent. And it's like they have been playing mental gymnastics with us for the past few weeks with the different kind of headlines. This is going to happen, that's going to happen. I mean, I feel like they're running around like headless chickens. They themselves do not know what they are doing. And I don't feel comfortable living in this country anymore. If I can leave, I probably will. And it's absolutely sad that it's come to this.
And that's devastating, because you are a proven wealth creator. You're somebody at the upper end of the financial scale, which means you pay enormous taxes to the Treasury, you employ people, you invest, all of that will be lost. And you speak for many thousands, if not tens of thousands of people who are going to flee the country. The left, of course, keeps saying that's fake news. Well, let's see how that plays out, shall we, in the next year or two. I think it's economic quicksand. I think it's a race to the bottom. And just briefly, if you can, with the clock against us, Lubna, you mentioned illegal immigration, so upwards of 50, 60, 70,000 people entering the country illegally on an annual basis. The cost of servicing government debt, just the interest alone, is now £100 billion a year, which is almost double the education budget. You've got the highest tax burden since the Second World War, and you've got 53% of the population now taking out of the system more than they contribute. If Britain, Lubna, was a business, it would be shut down.
I would say for sure, but can I just clarify that my financial situation has changed in the last a few months, and currently I'm not employing anyone, but hopefully in the future I would love to. But even if I was, it would unlikely be in Britain, right? Because for all the reasons that you've just stated, that this is not the place that I would personally want to invest my money in if I could. And frankly, the way that a lot of us have been treated, I'm no longer to invest my money and time in a country that is not serving me. And when I say, and I say this with a lot of respect, I love this country. It's given me everything. And, you know, I'm extremely grateful for being born here. I feel like I've won the lottery, but not in the current situation. I would not want to invest anything here. Interesting
story coming out of Australia now. An Australian senator has been suspended for a week after wearing a burqa in Parliament to push a ban for a ban on the Muslim garment. Pauline Hanson was condemned by fellow senators and latterly formally censured for the stunt on Monday, with one colleague accusing her of blatant racism. Well, let's get reaction now. Live in the studio is a marvellous journalist, the News Corps Australia-Europe correspondent, Sophie Ellsworth. Hello, Sophie.
Hi, Mark.
Great to have you in the studio. First of all, who is Pauline Hanson? This is a woman with growing popularity in Australia by the looks of it.
Absolutely it is. So Pauline Hanson is the leader of the One Nation Party, which I'd really mirror them with the Reform Party here. They have similar policies, similar ideas, broadly speaking, and their popularity is growing. They're a smaller party. We obviously have the Labor government in power, and we have the coalition similar to here with Conservatives and Labor. But there's a growing resentment with the main parties and a push now for people turning to alternatives such as One Nation, and that is who Pauline Hanson is. She's the leader of this party, which is described, Mark, as far right often by the leftist media, but the Conservative Party with conservative policies.
Oh, that's interesting. So that you wouldn't necessarily, just with a cold intellectual eye on it, you would not characterise them as extremists or far right?
I wouldn't know, and I don't think a lot of people would.
Yeah.
But when you read a lot of the dialogue in the Australian media, which is a lot of left-leaning media, that picture may be painted.
And Pauline Hanson, not unlike Nigel Farage in this country, is a very charismatic figure. She's very commanding. She's got presence. She's not afraid of cancellation. And now she's just conducted this bold stunt of wearing a burqa in Parliament. So she's not taking any prisoners, is she?
No, and she's stood by what she's done. Now, whether you agree with that or not, that's for people to make their own decisions. But she was trying to introduce a bill to ban the burqa. That was rejected, so she effectively pulled this stunt moments after. And as a result, they've banned her from Parliament for a week, the last remaining days of Parliament this year, which is interesting, Mark, because this hasn't happened where they've banned a senator, I think, since the late 1970s. So it's a rare thing to happen in Australia. But of course, many people are annoyed with this. Some are saying it's offensive what she did. Others saying good on her for doing it. So there's a mixed response.
Well, all she's done, she's not said anything. She's just worn a burqa.
She has.
It's a statement. It's performative. So therefore, you know, hard necessarily to just literally describe it as racist. I mean, has this been a good moment for her, or has it backfired? What do you think?
I think there's a mixed response, really, Mark. As some will say, why is she doing this? I was just reading some comment pieces in Australia saying she's really stooping low to actually pull this stunt. But look, Mark, we're talking about it here in London. It's gone all around the world. It was yesterday on many of the websites around the world. So it's interesting for a small party, they've had a global impact.
And is it my understanding that legal migration into Australia is proportionally even higher than here in the UK, or on a similar level?
It is high, and she has. This is one of her policies. She's saying we've got far too high level of migration. She's also called for things such as if there's illegal migrants, they should be removed. They should be sent back to where they have originated from. She's quite strong on her anti-migration stance and illegal migrants, which I guess you could argue, Mark, is similar to here with Reform's attitude towards migration. So it's interesting.
And it really surprised me as a story, Sophie, because I thought the Australians had put the immigration issue to bed with Operation Sovereign Borders under Prime Minister Abbott, which looks to have back in the day, was it around 2013, and they unilaterally stopped the boats. But seemingly this issue has returned as a hot topic in Australia. Migration
is always a topic in Australia. Similar to here, it's always discussed, but it's very different to compare. It's different situation because we could stop the illegal migrants coming across in boats. Tony Abbott, former Prime Minister, did stop that. You guys in the UK always refer to the success Australia had, but remembering we're a country that sits in the middle of there's not a lot around us. So to stop these boats coming in from different countries, whereas here with the Channel, it's only a short distance, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true.
So it's easier in Australia to stop it.
Yeah, Australia had the benefit of geography and political will, of course, which we certainly don't have in this country at the moment. And what about, from people that you're still in touch with in Australia, what is life like in Australia from a day-to-day point of view? And are the issues of, divided societies, people living in parallel, not speaking the language, not participating in Australian culture, how big an issue is it for everyday Australians, do you think?
So I often think with my time here in the UK, Mark, compared to living in Australia, we do discuss a lot of the same issues. Sometimes I feel we're a bit behind the UK in issues that we are tackling, but it's similar things that are dominating over there. Cost of living, inability to afford a house. Yes, migration does flare up, from time to time. The issues that is always discussed here, the anti-Semitic problems that we've had in Australia, which has made headlines around the world. So similar problems really, but the big one I think is cost of living in Australia. It is very expensive to live in some of the capital cities such as Sydney and Melbourne, and some people say it's as bad as being in London.
And not helped by large-scale migration because, of course, that puts pressure on housing, doesn't it, as well as other infrastructures, so it's a big old issue. What can this woman do, Pauline Hanson? Will she ever achieve power, do you think?
She won't achieve power. It's a different political system here. No, obviously in Australia also it's compulsory to vote. It's not compulsory to vote here. We have the two major parties. Labor are winning. They're the government at the moment, and they're winning every poll quite convincingly. A recent poll showed Labor at 36% of support, the Coalition 24%, and One Nation 13%. She has no seats in the lower house to achieve government. She only has seats in the upper house. Don't want to make it too confusing for people, Mark, but the short is she will not be in power.
And yet she represents the views of potentially millions of Australians.
Potentially.
Given, for example, now this Burka stunt, why has she done that? Why is the Burka an issue for her?
So she has said that it's a national security risk. She doesn't like what the burqa represents, and she said it should be banned and we should follow many other countries. I think Denmark, it's banned.
Yeah, it is. France.
France is another one. Yeah. There's a whole list of countries, and she's saying it should be banned, and she's saying it's a risk. Having it, that people can wear this in society, they can hide behind it. She's come out on that.
Isn't it ironic that the left, who you would have thought would be of a feminist mindset, have got no problem with the burqa, which involves covering the entire face and body of a woman?
Well, that's some of the arguments that have been in Australia. The irony of this whole situation, I mean, it's...
What happened? Where are the Western feminists who are on the streets going, why are our sisters covering their entire faces and bodies at the behest of a misogynistic culture? Why are people who identify as women but with male physiology using female spaces? What happened to Western feminism?
Well, it's really interesting, Mark, and this is where it's dividing the room, because you obviously have people who are very appalled by what Pauline Hanson did and others saying good on her.
It wasn't, of course, just the leftward shift, it was the mess over Brexit, if you remember.
Most definitely, and you joined the Brexit Party, and following that, Reform UK, who you now seek to have the election of in a couple of years' time. And What does this move by Kevin Hollinrake, this decision to post something online which compares Reform UK to the Nazis, what does it tell us about the contemporary modern-day Tory party?
I'm afraid what it says about them is that they've lost the plot completely. I mean, at the very best, that was a childish joke, but please, not coming from the chairman of the Conservative Party. You should have known a great deal better. And the other thing it might be is just sheer desperation. They know they're losing to Reform, so they have to insult Reform. They would do so much better if they learnt from us.
Most definitely. And this is the party that you left. Maria Caulfield, a former Conservative MP, quote tweeted Kevin Hollinrake's post and said, "This is why I left the Tory party."
Indeed, and I think a lot of people will actually be driven out by that tweet from Kevin Hollinrake. I think a lot of them will now say, look, you know, they just don't get it. They equate any talk of controlling immigration with racism. They're insulting millions of ordinary Reform supporters, just ordinary guys and girls who want to support Reform, and they're being called Nazis. Now, you know, what are they supposed to think? I actually think he could cause a mini exodus from his party by what he's done.
And it shows, doesn't it, Anne, that they're running scared. Your former colleague, your former leader, Margaret Thatcher, said that when people resort to insults, it means they've lost the argument.
Well, indeed. And, I mean, it was such a stupid insult. I mean, you look at those two badges, they're nothing like each other, except the fact they're round badges. Well, I wore round badges in the Tory party. I wore one that said, "A good Thatcher keeps you dry." I mean, it is perfectly normal for political activists or political supporters in general to wear badges from time to time. There's nothing odd about that. The Tories do it themselves.
And what's strange is that this is the playbook of the hard left normally, isn't it? Demonising people as Nazis and fascists.
Yeah, indeed it is. But I think, you know, the Tory party is now so desperate that it picks on anything. Even if that was supposed to have been a casual joke, then the chairman of the Tory party should have stopped and thought, this is only a joke, but might it be taken the wrong way? Didn't even ask himself that.
It also suggests a degree of arrogance on the part of the party, doesn't it? There's no contrition for the legacy of 14 years of Conservative rule, for example, only sneering at their rival.
Yeah, they don't get it. They absolutely don't get it. They don't understand the rejection that they have suffered and are suffering daily in the polls at the hands of the British people. They don't get that at all. They don't get that the reason that people are flocking to Reform is not because they're Nazis, but because they desperately want common sense restored into British life, and they want freedom restored into British life. And if only the Tory party would concentrate on that, it might manage to pluck back a couple of votes, but only a couple probably.
You must feel rather gratified by how things have played out. You were a very early dissident of the Conservative project, and I think it was a significant moment, Anne. I mean, it demonstrates your judgment that you called it that early, all the way back in 2019. But others have followed, as you said, since. And, you know, it was not an easy thing for you to do, to leave the Tory party, was it? You'd been a member and supporter of the party for decades, for your entire adult life, and even you'd had enough.
Yes, I mean, I was a member of the party for 55 years.
Wow.
I'd been an activist in my youth, you know, branch, area, chairmanships and all that sort of stuff. And I had always been a very active and fully committed Tory from the age of 16 when I joined the Young Conservatives. And so it wasn't easy, but on the other hand, I could see the path ahead. I could see it very, very clearly. And I reckon that we were in one of those periods, only occurs about every century in British politics, when there's a genuine upheaval. The last one was the emergence of the Labour Party about a century ago. And I was hoping that would play out. But the real reason I left in 2019 was because the Tories, and it was the Tories, it was Cameron, had held a referendum of the people, and then they spent years, and I do mean years, messing about, trying not to implement it in any real sense. And they still haven't. Because
they didn't want it to happen. I mean, the Conservatives are not Conservative anymore. It must sadden you to see what's happened. If you want high taxes, a big state, big spending, then you should vote Labour. If you want an end to illegal immigration, low taxes and economic growth, then perhaps go for reform. Who are the Tories for now, Anne?
I don't know. The sad thing is, I don't think they know themselves. They will talk the language of reform. They'll talk tougher control of immigration, lower taxes, etc. But they've absolutely no record at all. And don't forget that up until last year, they've been there for 14 long years. They've no record at all of actually matching action to words. None.
I think it's hubris, isn't it? It's like the last days of Rome, Anne. Let's take a listen now to a response to a different story, which is allegations of racism on the part of Nigel Farage as a teenager. This is a voice note, Anne, from Sharon. Sharon, all yours.
Morning, Mark. It just makes me laugh about what we're talking about this morning. I'm 61, and when we were kids, we used to watch Freddie Starr walking around with his wellies on, dressing up as a Nazi. We used to watch the black and white minstrel show. All of these things that nobody now is allowed to do. But all them many years ago, I'm the same age as Nigel Farage, and I can remember all them. So what are they digging up is just a load of rubbish. Good show, Mark. Sharon from Yorkshire.
Thank you so much for... Was that Sarah or Sharon? Sharon, thank you, Sharon. Sorry, a little block on the line there. Thank you, Sharon, for a lovely voice note and kind words. And Anne and I will, I've got to say, echo that sentiment of your voice note. Similarly, Anne, we've got Kieran in Liverpool texting me saying, good morning, Mark. In relation to Nigel Farage's so-called racist comment as a child, I just watched... Oh, no, so he said, just watch any episode of Only Fools and Horses and you'll hear similar comments, which are clearly not acceptable now, but they were a sign of the times. Why are we seeing this political excavation happening, Anne?
Well, first of all, it is pathetic. I mean, I echo your viewers' comments on that. I don't want to sound so cynical, but if you really want to hear sick jokes and terrible banter, etc., just try Teenage Boys. I mean, it is the most normal thing on earth. It really is. And I can't take it seriously. You asked me why they're dredging it up now. I would give you the same answer that I gave you just now in response to a different question, which is desperation. They can't actually argue with the policies. They can't argue with the vast surge of popular support. So they try to go back decades of a man's life to when he was a teenager and take some nonsense banter and make it real. And it is just such nonsense.
And Anne, today's show is dedicated to and focused upon alarm clock Brits. That is a term coined by my earlier listener who left a voice note, Karen. And this is people that get up in the morning, put a shift in, pay their taxes for diminishing returns. And Anne, I've got this message from Dale, who says, good morning, Mark. I'm a self-employed alarm clock Brit. The alarm goes off anywhere between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. 7 days a week, Anne. Depending on where I'm working, I finish at around 7 or 8 in the evening, then do it all again. Is it worth it? Well, I love what I do, but in monetary gain, not really. My partner has friends who don't work, and between them get £6,000 a month in tax-free benefits, making more than I do. What's the alternative to work? Sitting on my backside watching life go by? No thanks, I'd sooner be contributing and working than sitting idle taking everyone for a ride. I'm 57 and have worked since I was 17, and I'll be working till I drop. That's Dale, and Dale speaks for many, doesn't he, Anne? In many ways, you get up in the morning, what's the point?
Well, indeed, and I mean, I think, alarm clock Brits, as they're called, really are right to feel resentful, because it is too easy not to work in this country. I know that. I've been an employment minister. It's too easy not to work. Successive governments have tried successive measures. None of them have been really effective, and largely because the will is not there. And the will does need to be there to actually say to people who are perfectly capable of working, well, it's your choice. You work or you laze around at home, but we won't pay you to do the latter.
Are you an alarm clock Brit, someone that gets up in the morning, puts a shift in and contributes more than you take out? Joe is in Bournemouth. Good morning, Mark. I used to be an alarm clock Brit, but now I tend to wake up before my alarm, worrying about finances. I would actually love to get back to being an alarm clock Brit. Never going to happen whilst these morons are in power. That's Joe in Bournemouth. Joe, thank you so much for that text, and I totally hear where you're coming from. Let's get reaction to the big political stories of the day from the deputy political editor at the Sun newspaper, Ryan Saby. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. I know the Sun newspaper, right, always tries to be cheerful and positive, but it's hard to be today, isn't it, on the eve of the budget. My viewers and listeners, they are struggling, and many of them think, given the levels of taxation and the high inflation which erodes their wages, that they're not sure what is the point of being an alarm clock Brit.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. People work hard all year round, you know, particularly difficult this time of year, nights drawing in and that kind of thing. I think that's why you're going to have to. We're going to be looking to Rachel Reeves tomorrow for maybe a little bit of help. But all the signs so far suggest it's going to be a very, very difficult budget. Now, the Chancellor was speaking to Labour MPs last night, and one thing that she did talk about was the cost of living crisis. The cost of living is one of those three things that she's pointed to when it comes to tomorrow's budget, trying to get the national debt down, trying to sort of help the NHS. Also, in cost of living, she's done a couple of things so far, such as freeze prescription freezes and rail fares for next year. And she actually says there is more that she will actually do. So I know people are finding it tough, and it's perhaps not going to make much of a difference, but there will be a few things in the budget that might help. And I think with energy bills, they've been going up for a long time. They went up the energy cap went up last week. It's expected to go up in March, April as well. But I think that the energy bills, they'll try and bring VAT off those bills themselves. So look, it's going to be a very, very tough budget for lots of people. She said those with the broadest shoulders should actually carry a lot of the weight for this. But she's also said that everybody's got to do their bit. So it's going to be a tough day.
Ryan, who wrote the budget that we're going to hear tomorrow? Rachel Reeves or Labour backbenchers?
I think it's a very good question, that, Mark. I think one of the things that she's beholden to is Labour backbenchers. Now, she's spoken a lot over the last past few months about how she wants to bring down that welfare bill. Now, she is absolutely beholden to those Labour MPs. They tried to get through £5 billion worth of savings over the summer, and that absolutely failed. They didn't even go ahead with the vote. And linked to welfare, big part of her plans will be the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap. Now, that was one issue that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves didn't even want to touch during that election campaign, and even up to just a few months ago. But as that political pressure and that political heat was turned up on those two in Downing Street, they really felt they had no choice. Now, they are going to be raising taxes to pay for that. But the question is, it's going to be hardworking people, pay their taxes to who are going to foot that bill. The fact they can't bring down that welfare bill, getting out of control, and I think that's where there'll be a little bit of despondency. I say a little bit of despondency. There will be lots of despondency. It's a lot of tax and spend, but not much savings.
Briefly, before we let you go, Ryan, your reaction to the publishing of a post on X on Sunday night of the Tory party chairman, Kevin Hollinrake, comparing a badge of Reform UK, a new logo, and a Nazi badge. Misjudgment, sackable offence? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think Kevin Hollinrake is going to be sacked over this. I was with Kemi Badenoch yesterday at the CBI conference, and she tried to brush this away and play it down. So he won't be sacked. It was, it looks on, it was, totally the wrong thing to do. And Nigel Farage obviously spoke out against this yesterday, saying it puts his safety at risk. But and Suella Braverman, former Home Secretary, also spoke out about that. So. Kevin Hollinrake, he keeps his job. Kemi Badenoch sticking by him.
What might your concerns be about today's budget?
Oh my gosh, where do we start? First, there's a process and then there's the content. I think we'll all agree that the process of getting to this budget has been an absolute pantomime. And I think it's time we stop this and just had, instead of a budget day, that a Chancellor goes to Parliament and just says what they're going to do, because it's just been disgraceful, all the kite flying. But then content-wise, I think this will be an economically illiterate budget. there seems to be very little understanding of what the country needs at the moment. And it's you know, as we've all suspected, it looks as though it's going to be a budget for the backbenchers and not for rebuilding Britain. I mean, just in my area, just a small example on the reducing the cash ISAs, we already have one of the lowest saving rates in the G7.
Yeah.
And rather than doing that and educating people, because there is a job of educating people to say that in cash you don't get, you know, the returns you need to secure your future, what they should be looking at is something like encouraging pension funds to invest some of their equities into UK businesses, because they just show that they don't understand, behavior of individuals. Because what people will do is because they want low risk in cash ISAs, they'll simply put that money in, say, a cash ETF, and it won't go to UK businesses. But overall, there's so much she could do to actually encourage business and confidence. And instead, we've got confidence that's on the floor. It's it's the lowest it's been since the global financial crisis. And there's little in this budget that I can see that's actually going to create the fairness we need in our system. They keep going on about fairness, but actually look at the tax gap. Look at the trusts that need reforming. Look at actually other things. Look at an online transaction tax. There are other things they can do, but there's nothing in this budget that gives me confidence that this is a Chancellor who actually understands how to get our economy growing.
And Gina, you are far from being a rabid right-winger, I should say. You're not a Tory, you're not a Reform UK supporter, no. But you can just see from a cold, calculating business point of view that today's budget is likely to make things worse, not better, for my viewers and listeners.
Absolutely, because it's the economy, stupid, as the saying goes. It's not about politics. It's about, I don't care which political party you're in. Our country is in crises. We need money to spend on rebuilding our infrastructure, to addressing the systemic failures we've got. And rather than tinkering, we need real reform, and we need to raise money. And the fairness point is a real one. I absolutely agree that people are cross and angry about the unfairness in our tax system, but that's what should be addressed. You know, we've got people who are avoiding their taxes. Let's get them paying their taxes. Let's get businesses paying their fair share. And I don't mean businesses on the high street, I mean digital businesses. I mean, let's get a proper tax system that's simple and fair and invested in, so that it's collected properly, rather than punishing people all the time and, you know, making it much harder. I mean, overnight, this new announcement on the minimum wage or living wage, when you've got the Resolution Foundation, a fan of the Labour Party, saying that it will cause crisis for under 21s and mean that number of not in employment or education could go up to 1 million. 1 million. I mean, it's disgraceful.
Indeed, and the Resolution Foundation that you mentioned, the Labour Party, one of its favourite think tanks, has also suggested that the workers' rights package is going to hurt growth, it's going to hurt investment, it's going to hurt employment. And the Tony Blair Institute have said that the workers' rights package must be mothballed, paused at best. It's not going to happen,
as I said,
is it?
It is an economically illiterate budget, and I don't understand why she doesn't have, or whoever the advisors are around it, because there must be advisors. Every government has advisors, every treasury have advisors, or maybe are not speaking with the government, with Mr. Starmer and Mrs. Reeves. Maybe they're just not listening. But I can tell you, as a business person, as an investor, as looking after people's money, this budget, people are not going to be taking kindly to it.
I've had a couple of people saying, you know, why is this happening? Why are they doing this? Is it political ideology over economic reality?
I think it is. I think that what they're doing, I mean, they don't seem to have a vision. And this is actually something more holistically about the Labour Party. If they had a vision and a plan and said, look, what we're going to do is we're going to create a fairer society, and this is how we're going to do it, then people would understand. And, you know, they keep going on about the bond markets. I can tell you what the markets want, it's what I do every day, is certainty and confidence. And we don't have that because we can't see a plan. What they seem to do is kite fly one thing, the backbenchers are unhappy, so they change their minds, and it's politics that changes every day depending on the weather.
Briefly, Gina, are the Tories escaping sort of accountability here, given that they were in power for 14 years? Is it important to kind of put that in context, that they're partly culpable for this rather dysfunctional economy that we've got?
Look, Mark, there's no denying, I know you were like this, but there's no denying the effects of 14 years of poor political choices by the Conservative Party and the fact that we Brexited. Those are both realities. But what we need to do is deal with policies now that will fix some of those black holes. It's no point just looking backwards. And that's what, you can't carry on blaming the people all the time. You need to fix it. And that's what the government should be doing. We should be focusing on policies that actually fix our economy, create jobs, create growth, and actually invest in our country.
Well, Gina, when we've got more time, you and I can have a good old Brexit ding-dong. Before I let you go, we share the same view, which is that we want the viewers and listeners to this show to be able to, you know, work, make something of their lives, contribute to the system, have something to show for it at the end of it. At the moment, you know, I'm getting such a message, Gina, from so many people listening to and watching the show. Some of them have said, if I had the money, I would leave. That's the first thing they're saying. Oh, yes. A lot of people are saying, I took a message earlier, a voice note from a chap who's been at the bus stop since 5 a.m, waiting for a bus which is 20 minutes late to go and do a 12-hour shift, and he'll be left with precious little once he's paid his costs and his taxes at the end of the hard working day. So we've got that, and I've just taken a call from Mary in Leeds, and her son has been through 40 job applications. He's well qualified, he's 19 years of age, he wants to work, he cannot find work, and so therefore the outlook is quite grim.
It is, but when you've got to, you know, the national insurance tax that they brought in last April has really damaged the employment possibilities for youngsters when it comes to different sectors. We already know that data and we already see that happening. And from what I do in investment side, I can tell you people with money, it's not just people with lots of money who are leaving. I mean, I'm just to give you an anecdote, on Monday I was having my chemo, I'm going through chemotherapy and at the moment, and on the ward that I was on in my NHS hospital, all the nurses and doctors were talking about is where they're going to, their applications to Australia, to New Zealand, the fact they're leaving. So this is not just the wealthy who are saying, you know, what we perceive as wealthy people. These are people who are saying, why would we stay here? The economy is not working. The environment is one of hostility and jealousy. We don't want to bring our families up here. That's not, you know, we need aspiration, we need confidence, we need creativity, we need to have a positive outlook. And that's just not being delivered at the moment.
Stephen, what are the implications of most trials being processed without a jury?
It's the most egregious attack upon our constitution that anybody's done in hundreds of years. The right to trial by jury is 810 years old. It's so well established. It's often considered the foundation of our democratic freedom. Together with the right to vote, it's the most important right we have. And this government is apparently just going to brazenly destroy that, despite never putting that in its manifesto and, in fact, lying to us and telling us that it really valued trial by jury, which is probably the worst part of this. The salt on the wound is the fact that David Lammy publicly declared how much and how important trial by jury is. It is incredibly important, and yet they are apparently going to throw it away. This is the step towards dictatorship, and there's no other way to put that. And it's not. And I hope I'm not coming across as particularly animated or melodramatic, because there is no other way to describe the loss of trial by jury. It is as important as losing the right to vote.
And why is a jury trial a barrier to sort of autocracy? What is the value of a jury in relation and in comparison to, let's say, a judge?
So we do still have the finest judges in the world broadly. But judges are human beings like anyone else. And the minute you have criminal trials by a single individual who is employed by the state, who is promoted by the state, whose future career success depends upon the state, whose salary is paid by the state, whose pension in the future will be paid or not paid by the state, you start to see that it is impossible, just impossible, to have such a human being be in any way objective or in any way fair. And that's why we invented juries 810 years ago. Humans don't change. Humans are not different. That, you know, this is one of the reasons why racism is so absolutely absurd. Humans are consistent in how we behave. And 810 years ago, we realized you cannot have one man or woman employed by the state deciding whether or not what you are saying is true. Instead, we have juries, which is the 12-man and 12 human being system, which is even if imperfect, is so much better than one human being employed by the state. You simply cannot have this. It will immediately descend into communist-style show trials. There is no way to avoid it. I actually, because we do have good judges, I sincerely doubt they want this power, because it just is so inherently corrupting that it cannot end well. It will not end well. Goodness knows what Labour thinks it's doing. We have a human rights prime minister destroying our most important human right.
Is a reasonable defence that there are over 80,000 cases still yet to be heard, that this is about tackling the backlog?
No. No, we're a population of nearly 70 million, probably over 70 million if we actually bothered to count how many of us there are. 80,000
you've got to put the boats in.
Yeah, exactly.
Round it up a little bit.
Yes, just to do the counting, which they don't bother to do. 80,000 is a pathetically small amount by anybody's standards. And in any event, they've allowed this backlog to build up. They don't we have courts in this land which we pay for to heat and light, but we don't actually bother to put a judge in them every day. We don't bother to put a jury in them every day. We have them sitting idle. We could quite easily have dealt with this backlog in an entirely different way. And the backlog has been built up because, as your listeners and viewers know, the prison service doesn't work and we don't really have enough prison spaces. So the backlog is helpful to any government of any type, be it, however it's composed by a political party, because it doesn't necessarily bring the prison system to a grinding halt. So the backlog is simply a practical part of the system. We have justice in this country moves incredibly slowly wherever it is. And it's no different that it moves slowly in crime. I don't know why you can suggest that a judge would speed things up unless a judge is just going to find everyone guilty. I mean, the only way a judge can actually speed up a backlog is to just immediately go guilty, 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 guilty. And if that's what we're reducing justice to, then what on earth have we become? I can't overstate this one. This is a Labour government who have spent decades telling us they care about human rights and justice and goodness and fairness, and they're going to destroy the most important human right we have. This is an absolute disgrace. I don't think it should happen, and I hope we can constitutionally block it. I hope the House of Lords blocks it. I don't know what on earth they were doing announcing this before Budget Day. I don't know where this came from. It's an absolute blindside.
Do you think it's been essentially leaked today because of the focus on the budget? Are you curious about the timing of this news?
Well, but it's just absurd. I mean, they may as well have announced that they're going to build a Death Star. I mean, this is if they're worried about oh dear,
use of the prison.
Well, exactly. How does this go as a workshop? Well, they sit there and they go, we're going to have terrible trouble with the budget. We may as well announce that we're going to murder everybody's firstborn child. I mean, that's not. I don't think that's a PR improvement.
It places obviously an enormous amount of power into the hands of one individual. Is there a concern about left-leaning activist judges?
Yes, I mean, we have to admit that ever since Tony Blair, judges have been promoted because they demonstrate a commitment to diversity, equality and inclusion. Diversity, equality and inclusion is a political position. It is a left-wing political position. It is a communist political position. It is part of our Fabian Marxist problem. And if you have judges who for the last 25 years or so have been promoted and appointed on the basis of commitment to this political policy, then you have political judges. So you already have judges who are highly questionable. And I do actually think, Mark, that, and I'd like to say this for your listeners and viewers, our judges have survived in quality despite the changes Tony Blair brought in, very largely. But nonetheless, this is just a power no one should have. Our judiciary need to be like Gandalf. They need to be like Galadriel. They need to turn away this evil ring. They cannot wield this power safely. That no one can. I would be corrupted by this, Mark. I would not want this power for me. It is not something that a human being can safely wield. That's why 12 of us get together and try and do our best collectively. And it's, even if it's not perfect, it's the best system we've had. It is 810 years old. You don't throw away something like that just to get away from budget criticism.
No, Stephen, very briefly if you can, because the clock's against us, but a great question from Phil in Coventry. Can Calamity Lammy changing trial by jury be challenged under the ECHR? It's our human right to a trial by jury, is it not? And he says, when is this madness going to end? Your response to that?
So it's our right under our constitution for 810 years. What Tony Blair has done is created the ability to destroy our rights by aligning us with the ECHR, by assuming that we are European when we're not. So the ECHR does not incorporate a right to trial by jury because Europe is just a different place. And what the Human Rights Act is a monumental mistake, because it is an assumption that we all share the same values, and we value trial by jury and they don't. So no, I'm afraid the ECHR will be no help at all. And this is how joining up to a human rights convention has accidentally involved removing your human right.
People that purchased electric vehicles have been subjected to a con job, haven't they? They were told they were going to save the planet. They were told they were going to save money. Neither is the case.
That's right. Well, I mean, this is a case of I told you so. And that was very obvious quite early on into the development and rollout and the subsidy schemes that are available to people for these things. And if you think that, you know, the amount of money that was being offered by the government by way of subsidies for people to own these things was extraordinary. And there's a very simple rule: if something is too good to be true, then it is. And you were conned, and you let people, you know, smugness get the better of you. You weren't the planet savers, and you know, you walked into this trap, and it was very obvious that at some point the rug was going to be pulled from underneath you. EVs were an attempt to make people obedient, not an attempt to offer a climate solution. Then, you know, they offer only marginal benefits, and if you get rid of your petrol or diesel car prematurely, then, you know, you're still a net carbon emitter.
They've got to make the car, haven't they?
They've got to make the car. You can't make the car in Britain anymore because we don't do things like making steel, and we're losing our manufacturing industries as, you know, by the day. The more we sort of press this net zero agenda, and all of that capacity is moving to the east, where, of course, in China they burn a hell of a lot of coal to make us our net zero products, whether that's wind turbines, solar panels, or EVs, or their components. Because even if it's got a British flag on it, you know, saying made in Britain, actually most of the stuff that, or even in Europe, most of that stuff probably came from manufacturers elsewhere. So you know, I think this has been obvious from the outset. And what really triggered my view on that was, at the time, a lot of this stuff was sort of wrapped around the idea of air pollution, and the EVs were nicer for cities because they didn't produce all this smoke, which may or may not be true. But pretty soon after they're being released to the public to buy, academics, or so-called academics, and so-called scientists from air quality research and from you know, from the climate end of of research, started saying that the air pollution from EVs was worse because of the brake, because these cars are heavier, so they put more wear on the tires and on the brakes, and these are the greater part of air pollution from automobiles.
Also, isn't it? I mean, listen, Ben, I'm no scientist, but is it not worse to breathe in particles of rubber and brake pad than gases?
Oh, well, it depends on what the gases are, I guess. But
well, let's say, I mean, I don't know. What would you rather breathe in? You know, petrol fumes or small chunks of rubber and
Right.
brake pad? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but is it worth having that conversation?
What it probably is, I mean, air pollution in Britain, even in London, is a tiny fraction of what it was a century ago.
Yeah.
So even if there is more pollution from the tyres and from the brakes than there was sort of 10, 15 years ago, it's not. Air pollution scares are a proxy battle, if you will, of the climate war. So we don't want to get too into the weeds or drawn into their claims. The fact is that they were that anyone who bought an EV was going to face the same legislation at some point as people who owned petrol and diesel cars, because the truth of the green agenda is that it doesn't want private transport. It doesn't want industries either, incidentally, and it doesn't want economic growth. But it can only do one thing at a time. It can only dismantle one of our institutions or one of our freedoms or one of the things we like at a time. And so handing out huge subsidies to people who are prepared to buy EVs was a way of easing that process, salami slicing it. So I would say, well, we'll keep all these sort of wealthy motorists who hang around in SW1 and in London, we'll keep them happy by subsidising their cars and their mobility. Meanwhile, we'll push people slowly off the road at the other end of the market. You know, the poorer people will say it's for your own good, all of this legislation, and we'll price them off the roads. It's nothing more than communism in a green rosette, in my humble opinion. Here is the Chancellor on the subject of electric vehicles at the dispatch box yesterday.
I will ensure that drivers are taxed according to how much they drive and not just by the type of car they own, by introducing the electric vehicle excise duty on electric cars. This will be payable each year alongside vehicle excise duty at 3p per mile for electric cars and 1.5p for plug-in hybrids.
And let's be clear that if we didn't have this insane, self-destructive, zealous approach to net zero, the crazy unsustainable target, then many of those tax rises, if not all of them yesterday, would simply not have been necessary. We are paying through the nose for net zero whilst China build coal-fired power stations for fun. It makes no sense. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith. Good morning, Mr. Griffith.
Good morning, Mark.
Are you delighted at this U-turn, this tearing up of the Workers' Rights Bill, of course masterminded by Angela Rayner, which will not see workers have unfair dismissal rights from day one?
Well, this change is really good for workers and businesses because it means that businesses will be able to take a risk on people, as they always have done, and hire and not find themselves immediately down to the employment tribunal. But let's be clear, this is one page, one measure in a 330-page employment bill. What the government should be doing if they were serious about growth, and God knows we need it, they should be tearing up the whole bill, not just this one clause. They're still arsonists. They've just put down their flamethrower. They've still got plenty of matches and lighter fluid, unfortunately, when it comes to jobs. We need more jobs. Our young people desperately need jobs. We've got a generation jobless rising, and the government's really not serious. But it is a welcome U-turn, to be clear.
Indeed. And a worrying headline in the Telegraph today, Mr. Griffith. Young people flee Labour's high-tax Britain. A net 110,000 British people aged 16 to 34 emigrated in the year to March, according to figures from the ONS. So it means that almost the majority of net migration figures in this country are coming from those overseas. This doesn't end well, does it?
It doesn't end well at all. So at the high end, we've got people who've built businesses and wealth creators fleeing for other countries because of the Chancellor's prejudice and dogma. And at the other end, our best and brightest young people just feel, whether it's due to constant attacks by this government, street crime from the Mayor of London and other urban areas, they just feel that there's not enough here for them. That is a proper tragedy. We've always made a contribution by some of our young people travelling the world or the Commonwealth or the empire before it. But in this case, people are feeling pushed out. It's terrible that they don't feel that there's enough opportunity and positivity and optimism here at home. This is a great country, but I'm afraid socialism is not a great way to run your country if you want to give the maximum number of opportunities for young people.
This government is even more left-wing than feared, isn't it?
I think it's the most left-wing government this country's ever had, because it's left-wing on so many different fronts. We've got the economic socialism, we've got the red tape, we've got still the woke coming through our institutions, and we've got the state spending a record proportion, confirmed in the figures that came out this week, on itself. So it's great if you're addicted to welfare, if you're in the public sector, cosseted with quite good pensions to look forward to at the end. But if you're hardworking, getting up in the morning, want to work for yourself, want to be self-employed, all of these choices, the government's really not on your side. Next Conservative government will be. We didn't always get it right when we were in government. I'm a Conservative who joined the party under Mrs. Thatcher, and she did great things for the party.
Most definitely, and that was the golden era, wasn't it? Economically, politically, we'd gone from the sick man of Europe to a global beacon of diplomacy, of economic output, of creativity. We'd like to go back to those days. Many people, though, Andrew, see Nigel Farage and Reform UK as the path to glory for this country, not the Conservatives.
Well, look, the Conservative Party is under new management. Many of the top team are new. My own background was 27 years in business. I am serious about getting this country working again, cutting red tape, having the right fiscal framework, cheaper energy bills as put forward by my colleague Claire Coutinho. So look, people will have choices. I'm a big believer that politics, leading our great country, should absolutely be a competitive domain. But I think we are different. We are under new management. We're getting back to good conservative principles and policies. Things like this conference pledge to cut stamp duty, in my own department, promising to reverse the family business death tax, which is a devastating tax on family businesses, which will destroy a generation. Look, judge us as you see us, but we're back, we're here. It's Conservatives that have forced this U-turn on the terrible unemployment bill. There's more work to do. I'm not giving the government any credit or a free pass on all of the other things in that bill, the right to roam for trade unions, the back to the 1970s union powers and the rest of it. But we're here and we're fighting.
And if people believe and share that view with us, they need to sign up for a Sorbering, because the only way I can see that happening is if we get a mass movement of sensible British people who actually want their country back. And that has to be done through, obviously, a lawful legal organisation that actually shows these deficient government bodies, these sort of what I call the rule of lawyers, not the rule of law, all of these malign people who are serving themselves, not the British people. What we need to do is we need a movement that's going to actually overturn that, but start to change things now through a huge movement of consensus that we don't want what's happening.
And this goes, Rupert, just to interrupt you. Go on.
By 29, Mark, I think it could be too late.
29, it could be too late. And this goes beyond party politics, doesn't it? Because it seems that our establishment is rotten to the core. Not just the political class, the administration class, the bureaucracy, the whole thing, the BBC, you name it. It needs not just an overhaul, but axing altogether and starting again.
Well, first of all, it's completely rotten. And secondly, there are far too many of them, Mark. And I honestly, for the life of me, don't know what most of them do.
Yeah.
And you know, if you look at what Elon Musk, and by the way, he has basically allowed a lot of what's happening to happen by turning X into a free speech platform, which has given people the ability to actually speak logically and commonsensically and appeal to the British people to fight, because there's not enough fight in Britain now. People need to stand up and start, you know, actually taking back control of their country. They're far too polite and meek, and obviously they've got to do it all lawfully. We don't want any unpleasantness, but the fact of the matter is, your country, or everybody's country, my country, is slipping away from us every day, and we haven't got long now. It's getting very bad. As Elon Musk said, if we're not careful, we're going to become a prison island with no jury trials, you know, an omnipotent bureaucracy, which ultimately puts itself at the top of the agenda, not the British people. And that's what's happening every day.
With the distressing news revealed in today's Telegraph, Rupert, that a net 110,000 British people aged 16 to 34 emigrated in the new year to March, according to the ONS, accounting for 2/3 of all departing Britons. So we're importing low-skilled individuals who don't necessarily share our culture or speak the language, who will plug the gap in our public sector. Meanwhile, our brightest and youngest are fleeing the country.
Well, it's actually the reverse of what we should be doing with migration. A small amount of targeted migration is very good for a country. What we've got now, Mark, is we've got our rainmakers. We've got, quite apart from the people who are rich, and Labour's in self-denial about this, they don't think people are leaving. I can tell you definitively, loads of my friends have left. They have gone. They cannot stomach this anymore. And if you just look at what Rachel Reeves did yesterday, and we can talk about that if you want in a minute, but
yeah,
I honestly, we've got damaging migration taking place because we're importing people of low grade who basically don't share our culture, and we're losing rainmakers who are taking money with them. But most importantly, they're taking brain power with them. And you can't replace brain power. Brain power is not a piece of printed paper which we all transact business with. Brain power is for real. And we're losing those people every day they're going. And it's going to be very difficult to get them back, particularly if we have a country which is divided. We have sort of pockets of unintegrated people from different religions, different creeds, different colours, different beliefs. You know, we are going to be a divided nation. I don't want that. You know, I understand the young people. I'm with the young people. They're the future. And at the end of the day, if you look with a cold towel on your head as a young person at this country, you say to yourself, how am I going to buy myself a home, build myself a career, you know, bring up my children sensibly and look after them in a safe environment? You'd say, you know, well, take one look at Sadiq Khan's war zone, London, and you definitely leave straight away. Now, you know, we don't want our best young people leaving, but I don't blame them for leaving because there are countries, you know, I go to Australia a lot. They're going the same way as us, but they're nowhere near as far down the track. And I think that their ruling class does actually put the interests of the Australian people at the top of the agenda. It's a bit of a nanny state. It's a great place to live. You've got many other countries in the world who are welcoming the very able British, English people, because we have got the best people, Mark. Throughout history, we've actually had migration which has made us stronger. So from, you know, right from time immemorial, the Romans, they integrated. Then you had the Vikings and the Nordics, they integrated. Then you had obviously the Norman conquest, they've integrated. Then you've had basically the Huguenots, the Protestant Huguenots who were persecuted in France, they've integrated. Then you had the Jews. Many Jews were persecuted across Europe to a far greater extent than they were here. They've integrated. And these were the most able people in Europe. And obviously you've got a lot of very able people fleeing, you know, the German situation in the Second World War, before the Second World War, during the 30s. So we have benefited, but actually now what we've got is we have got a damaging situation where we're importing people who of low skill, low grade cultural difference, and we are exporting our best. The elite are going. And they're going in huge numbers.
It doesn't end well. We've got the post from Donald Trump, the President of the United States, posted on his own social media site, Truth Social. And he writes, the official United States foreign population stands at 53 million people, most of whom are on welfare from failed nations or from prisons, mental institutions, gangs or drug cartels. They and their children are supported through massive payments from patriotic American citizens who, because of their beautiful hearts, do not want to openly complain or cause trouble in any way, shape or form. They put up with what has happened to our country, but it's eating them alive to do so. A migrant earning $30,000 with a green card will get roughly $50,000 in yearly benefits for their family. The real migrant population is much higher. This refugee burden is a leading cause of social dysfunction in America, something that did not exist after World War II. Failed schools, high crime, urban decay, overcrowded hospitals, housing shortages and large deficits. As an example, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Somalian gangs are roaming the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping against hope that they will be left alone. Rupert, do you have Trump envy?
Look, I think he's stated what's happening here, Mark, and I don't know what, for the life of me, what Labour think they're doing, but I have to say that budget was extraordinary. I mean, the actual economic numbers were, and this goes to the point, were better than everybody thought, and yet she's breached all of her manifesto pledges. She has raised taxes by freezing tax thresholds going forward. She's basically all the OBR, and by the way, the OBR is the most efficient organisation that's ever walked the planet, quite apart from leaking the budget early by accident.
Their projections are always wrong.
Always wrong. So why are they wired into all the decision making? But the point is, what she's done is she has taxed productive Britain to fund the indolent. And ultimately, if you tax enterprise and you credit indolence, then you're basically slowly signing your own death warrant.
Rupert, go on.
But I think, Mark, I've got to say this. I think Labour has a Fabian agenda to create chaos because they think that's going to mean that Labour keeps being re-elected. I think that they're deeply misguided.
And briefly, Rupert, they might like an economic crash because that would allow them to have an emergency budget and an even more leftist agenda rolled out.
It's going to get worse and worse, Mark. I mean, you look at this workers' rights stuff that you started the program with. I mean, how are you going to employ anybody when you from day one you can't get rid of them if they're no good? And by the way, you know, there are people who are hired for whatever reason they're not good enough. They shouldn't be forced to keep them. These are people who are running proper businesses, and that workers' rights bill is going to put a minimum of $5 billion a year on the people running businesses. I've given an instruction to all my businesses. We don't want to employ anyone we don't need to employ. So what's going to happen is we're going to avoid employing people. We will increasingly use AI where we can. And in the end, these misguided trade unionists who lie at the heart of Labour, who've never done anything productive or creative in their lives, they pork barrel on the back of their members. At the end of the day, they are slowly destroying the British economy, the private enterprise, the actual bedrock of what drives our wealth. And until we reverse this sort of what I call vicious circle, it's just going to keep getting worse. And I love Britain, and I don't want to be too negative, but I can't see very much to be too excited about right now. And I think the fact everybody's leaving shows you that they agree with me.
Rupert, just rapid fire if we can. We know you have to run as well. Can I just ask you two things? Do we focus excessively on immigration? It's not a magic wand, is it, to fix all the problems in this country?
Immigration is our biggest issue. You know, we had a vote amongst our members, and we produced a wonderful booklet on you know, how we solve the problem, i.e. the causes of the problem.
But is it disproportionately focused upon? That's the criticism made by some.
It's a massive issue, Mark, and it's undermining everything that we stand for. And with the current leadership, it's being fostered and it's being effectively encouraged. It could be stopped with the will to do so. And you know, we need some of that Trump tweet. Some of that needs to be exported. As I did a Tucker Carlson interview on, which is I think out on Monday. And ultimately, you know, what we need is the colonies, the Americans, who used a bit of our sort of our freedom and constitutional sort of structure. We exported it to them, and we now need them to export to us some common sense, some logic, and a bit of sort of national pride. We do need their help, Mark, because we are going badly wrong.